Welcome to Legacy Therapy, the podcast that will teach you, in bite-sized chunks, how to leave a stress-free legacy so loved ones can focus on people, not paperwork, when you become ill or pass away. Here is your host and financial advocate, Stacey Golden-Lisnock.
Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Legacy Therapy, planning techniques for a stress-free legacy. Happy to have you here today, and we have a special guest with us. So I want to introduce her and get started today. We have Linda Fostek. She's from Get Off the Worry Go Round with Linda Fostek, the crisis planner and international speaker, best-selling author. She has a radio show. We'll ask her about that. She's a life coach. She's a consultant to facilitate recovery, avoid family conflicts, and control chaos when facing personal and natural disasters. Linda carries on her late father's legacy through her books. And Now What is one of the books. The next one, I probably can't say that on the air. It's SHIT, Happens, Password Passport, and the Crisis Planner Home System, of which I actually have right here. Just kind of want to show you. Excellent, excellent books. Linda was named in 2017 Networker of the Year by 516/631 ads, and we'll have to ask her about that. Profiled in the Long Island Business News, Who's Who, 2018 Business Services, and Who's Who Visionary within their business, and honored as a New York Power Woman by the Long Island Press and Queen's Courier. I guess you don't have to guess. She's from Long Island, right? And I'm in California here, so we become good friends, even though we're on opposite coasts, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. Linda is the co-leader of the Nassau and Suffolk chapters of WPN. What is that, Linda? WPN?
Is Women's Prosperity Network.
Okay, Women's Prosperity Network. Good to know. Certified speaker, member of the One Philosophy Founders Circle, Awakening Giants Mission for Global Transformation, and then Pulse, which I'll have to ask you too, PULSE.
That is the Pulse Patient Center for Education and Advocacy. So it's a patient advocacy volunteer group.
Excellent. You have so much going on with your life here. Wow, this is great. And then two more things here. We got Orion and ACP.
Yeah, NAAPC is the National Aging in Place Council, and ACP is the Association of Contingency Planners. So you guess I'm a planner.
You are. We're in the right place for sure. Founding board member of the Caregivers Resource Network. Oh, that's excellent. And board member of the Long Island NAIPC. So that's going to be National Association of something.
Aging in Place.
Aging in Place, okay. And a member of the Suffolk County CERT, CERT.
Which is Community Emergency Response Team.
Right, you are good. All right, well, after we got that all out of the way, excellent. Welcome, Linda. So happy to have you here.
I am delighted to be here, and we are having it started out as a fall feeling day with rain, and now it's kind of muggy and hot again. So it's transitioning.
Absolutely. East Coast, West Coast conversation. It's like, how's the weather there? All right, well, cool. Well, we're going to talk about more than weather today because you have a boatload of information to give to our listeners, and I really, really am looking forward to that. But first, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your personal story, because this whole idea of legacy therapy is designed so that people can tell their story, good and bad, about a legacy that somebody left behind, a loved one. In your case, I believe it was your father that you're going to talk about. So let's hear your story.
Well, my father was an engineer. And engineers have a unique way of looking at the world, I would say. And from the time I was a little child, I was never allowed to just complain about something. I always had, if I had a problem, I was supposed to bring a solution. Even if it wasn't the right solution, I was always supposed to offer a solution. And then it would become a discussion and a negotiation as to coming up with the right solution. But the fact that I had thought through a solution to my problem was always part of my upbringing. And, you know, my father continued to be that engineer and solution guy his whole life. And at the age of 70, he saw a lot of his friends starting to lose their spouses. And the one that was left was thrown into total chaos. They were, you know, the husband had never run the washing machine. The wife had never written a check. The kids swooped in from all over the country, picked up mom or dad and moved them someplace. And 6 months later, the parent was going, how did I get here? This wasn't my plan. You know, they're looking around like this wasn't what they had intended. So my father, the engineer, he said, okay, what they needed was a home operations manual that told them what to do to run a household. And it also organized some of the materials, you know, the important documents and things like that. But it was written like an engineer. It looked like something an engineer had put together, and he had no idea what to do with it after he wrote it. And so it sat on a shelf for 23 years.
Oh my
Now,
gosh.
and he passed away at 90. So this is 3 years after his passing. I'm in an event in New York City with Kevin Harrington, who was the inventor of the infomercial. He brought the Ginsu knife to TV.
Right.
He's also one of the original sharks on Shark Tank, and he owns a company called As Seen on TV. And I'm sure we've all seen their products in the
Sure.
stores. That's his brand. And somebody asked him how he chose from the 20,000 products he sees every year, the 20 to 30 he actually puts his name on. And his answer was so simple and yet so profound. He said if he saw something that filled a need, he felt compelled to bring it to the marketplace. And in that moment, it was like a light bulb went on over my head. And I think everybody in the room saw it because the glare had to be like ridiculous. And I said, oh my God, my father's thing. We need that now. Baby boomers need that now. Our parents are aging. We're facing our own mortality. Our children are growing up and moving out on their own. Oh my God, I need to redo this and make it in English that people can understand, but also bring this to the marketplace because I know that it will make a difference. And I started that journey over 6 years ago at this point, and I haven't looked back. And I know, you know, and through this 6 years time frame, my husband became extremely ill, disabled, on kidney dialysis, and I lost him 3 years ago. So all of the things that were in this planning process, everything I was developing, I know it works because it worked for me.
Yeah. Isn't
And
that
so
amazing how that happens? You get put into that spot and then it becomes something that you can utilize yourself and really it benefits you and the other people because you have a heart for that. And it's like the people that have a heart for that want to share it and scream from the rooftop, right? And that's like you want to get your
exactly.
word out. And so you do a radio show like every week on this, right? It's like
Well, the radio show is the Linda Fostek show, Get Off the Worry-Go-Round. And every week we address a different problem, but we always present solutions. And I've had some pretty incredible guests, especially through the pandemic, because there have been so many challenges that people have been facing with this pandemic that, I mean, topics just keep coming to me like, oh, I have to get this person on and that person on. And through all the things that I've done and the connections that I've made around the country and the world, I mean, I've met such incredible people to put on the show. In fact, you know, last week I had a woman whose book was From Fire to Freedom, and she talked about how, you know, as a senior, losing your job and transforming yourself and using your skill sets and becoming an entrepreneur and just changes your whole perspective on life. And it's the whole reinvention of who you are. You're not defined by the work, the job that you had. You become defined by the legacy that you're going to leave, which is actually, I think, really very timely with your topic as well.
yeah.
And next week, I've got a cybersecurity guy that's going to be talking about all our little devices and how to keep us safe when we're out there doing all the things we're doing. The scammers are out to get you in every way that you can imagine. And so he's going to be really interesting. And then I also have a doctor lined up who's going to be talking about how to build your immune system so you prevent getting COVID.
Oh, you've
So,
got some great stuff. Yeah.
you know, so
How do people listen to your show? How do you get to your show?
it's on boldbravemedia.com, and it's channel 100 at 9 p.m. Eastern, and that's on Tuesday nights.
On Tuesdays.
So,
Okay. We'll put that
and
in the show notes for sure if people want to tune in. And we can always listen after the fact, right? We don't have to listen real time.
right,
It's
it's all recorded, and I just have a lot of fun. This week I did a whole topic on going back to school and the challenges that people are having with back to school, and why this is like a back to school like we've never had before.
Oh gosh, you're never going to run out of ideas and new things to talk about because it keeps cycling around. I can't even believe on when you talk about the cybersecurity and all the scammers and everything that, in fact, I'm going to have somebody on too that she talks about Medicare scams and how people are just getting sucked into that, and then they bill the Medicare billions and billions of dollars for things that aren't actually done. So that's a whole nother topic.
I know, but there's so much that can go wrong.
Yes.
And it's like, and unfortunately, these people prey on the most vulnerable among us.
Absolutely. And that's why you have to take care of your elder parents and aunts and uncles and anybody that can't really take care of themselves. For our listeners, it's like, it's all about, making sure your legacy is going to be a good one and you're not going to leave other people, holding the bag, so to speak, with all your undone things. But it's getting the elderly and the people that aren't able to actually take action on their own behalf and get them up to speed. And sometimes that means taking it and doing it for them. I know I've had to do that for several people, couple of our friends, and I've got clients too that, you find yourself being almost like all these people's daughters. It's like, oh, if you had a daughter, they'd be doing this, but I'll step in and help you. But I can't do that for everybody, which is why I'm doing this podcast. It's like, at least I can get the word out. It's like, help the people that can't help themselves, but also help yourself, so that you're not that one that everybody thinks has it together and you really don't have it together.
Exactly. So. And, and it's really about accessing. There's so many tools and resources out there that can help you be prepared for life unexpected. But most of us put it off because it's an important task, but it's not urgent.
That's right.
Urgent always gets taken care of. But when something becomes urgent, at that point, you have fewer options. And most of us make bad decisions when you're in the middle of a crisis. I mean, just look at the movie The Poseidon Adventure when the minister was leading everybody in the wrong direction to what would have been the top of the boat. But in that situation where the boat was upside down, he was leading them underwater as opposed to out to air.
That's right. So, yeah, I just listened to an estate planning attorney question and answer, and somebody's question was, my husband's just got a terminal diagnosis. What should we be doing? And what the answer was a little shocking to me, but his answer was, you should be spending all of your time with your husband. Everything that needed to be done should have already been done. And at this point, it's almost too late. I don't know. I have a friend that passed away 6 years ago, and I was instrumental in getting all of her stuff done, like in the 11th hour. I mean, we got her house in a trust 2 weeks before she passed. Had we not done that, her daughter and son would have lost the home, and they would have lost the business. They would have lost everything. So yeah. I'm saying that to say, get the stuff done now, because when it's urgent, you are going to be like in a frenzy, and your emotions are going to be so high, and you're going to be torn. You're going to want to spend the time with that loved one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have time to spend with them. Sometimes you don't.
Right.
Even though my husband had been sick for so long, I never expected him to die. And until like 10 days before, he actually passed, it just wasn't even in my thought process that I could lose him.
But it's interesting you say that, and maybe expand on that just a little bit so people get it, because I have a client too who recently, the husband was on dialysis for, I think I want to say it was 5 years or something. He wasn't going to last the long haul. He had to keep being on there more and more and more. And he got to the point where like she couldn't handle him at home anymore. But same thing, when he finally died, she was shocked. Like she didn't expect that he was going to die. And I'm like, well, from where I stand, it was obvious that he was in his final years or days or months or something. But tell us, what is that like?
It's very disconcerting because, you're like, I mean, my husband had been on a dialysis for 3 years. We were doing home hemodialysis. So I was his dialysis partner. He was doing extremely well. And then he had an adverse reaction to an antibiotic that caused a Stevens-Johnson syndrome reaction, which is a very rare skin thing.
They thought I had Stevens-Johnson and they rushed me to the emergency in an ambulance. I know what Stevens-Johnson is.
It's extremely rare, but it is frequently fatal.
Right.
Because what it does is it causes the epidermis, the outer layer of the skin, to separate from the next layer of the skin. And in giant blisters. And I mean, like, I was like, and knowing he was a diabetic, he was a kidney patient, his healing was not going to be good.
Right.
And he had, I mean, from his knees down, he was just an open oozing wound.
Yeah. Oh.
And
but still, the whole thing was a shock to you that he actually passed away.
Yeah, but we were treating that, and things were improving. But then I could also see that things were also not going well because he ended up with sepsis and gangrene, and then osteomyelitis, where they were going to amputate his leg, and he was like, "I'm done. I came in whole. I'm going out whole." And he stopped dialysis, and then 10 days later he was gone.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
So it was like, but it wasn't until that point where he like was done that I was ready to say, okay, he's done. But in the meantime, he had everything done. He had his funeral arrangements made. He had everything planned. I didn't have to do anything.
Wow, that is amazing. Now that's, you can look back on that and say, thank you, right? So it made the mourning part, to be able to mourn for somebody is part of the healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't have that because your stability is rocked, maybe there's no cash anywhere, you don't even know how you're going to bury them, or there hasn't been arrangements made. I can see where somebody just is damaged. They become a damaged person psychologically, possibly even their health could disintegrate because of the stress around that whole thing. So how is it that people can actually plan like your husband did? Like what is it going to take for somebody who isn't terminal, that just wants to be a good person to their family? What does it take?
Well, it is an act of love. I mean, you have to look at it, thinking about, okay, what would happen if I wasn't here? And I had those, my husband was a diabetic for 20 years. I worked as a pharmaceutical rep on the road. I was, driving 100 miles a day in the city, all over the place. And knowing that when he became disabled, that if something happened to me, where would the money come from? So I thought ahead. I mean, I got $1 million life insurance policy on myself. I had gap disability insurance that would cover the half of the income that I would have lost if I had to go on long-term disability. God forbid I got injured in an accident. I even got my own long-term care policy at that time because I said, I'm definitely going to outlive him, and I have no children, and nobody's going to take care of me, so I better plan ahead and do that.
Right.
But a peace of mind of knowing that if something happened to me, he was going to be taken care of. I wasn't going to have to worry about him.
Right.
That took all the stress out of my life. And it also took stress out of his and allowed him to do the things that he needed to do to take care of himself. Right. So, and with all of that planning, and when you do all your legal documents, when you get all your insurances, when you do your financial planning, they're all contingency plans. but at some point you're going to have to use part of them for something. Something is going to happen. Nobody is, we're all going to die. I know that sounds terrible, but
Yeah.
someday we're all going to die. Hopefully it's, when you're 100 years old in your bed in your sleep, but it's not always that simple. So you have to plan ahead, and I guess I've always been a planner because the training from my father, I was a Girl Scout. Everything that I've ever done has always been wrapped around planning.
You were probably an A student too, right?
I was not.
You weren't? Oh.
No.
See, there goes that whole thing about the A student, because I was an A student. I was all about the planning and I had to know all the answers by like the back of my hand before the test. But you weren't an A student, so
I discovered in the 4th grade that I didn't have to study. I was a kinesthetic learner, and as long as I was in the classroom, I absorbed enough. I never took a book home. I never did homework. I never did anything. Never went to the library. I could see how everything else was connected to everything else. So I was a B student. I got a couple of C's.
Yeah.
I got a couple of A's, but I didn't work for any of them.
Right.
I would get an A+ for creativity on my idea for a paper, and then I'd get like a C- because there weren't any footnotes. And I was perfectly content with that. Because,
yeah.
And I think that's why I'm good at what I do now, because it is about looking at that big picture and seeing how everything is interconnected. And, we're looking at what's happened now with COVID, or what's happened, with families who have been devastated by the wildfires or the hurricanes or floods, or, just having physical disabilities happen, and all these things. And the planning for one, ironically, is the same planning you need for all.
Right.
It's not separate. It's not like, okay, this is my disaster plan if there's a wildfire, and this is my disaster plan if something happens to me.
Right.
It's the same plan.
Right. And you get it done once, right? You take the time. It's kind of like, I look at it like taxes. I used to fret internally about, because, being a business owner, there's a lot more to do than just a W-2 person, right? And if you wait till the end of the year or till April of the following year, you have all of it. You got to go back and just sort of find everything. So I got to the point at some years where I would do it quarterly. And so I would have it, and I would be like, already at the end of the year, I'd be like, whew, this was great. And I had like my one year, I think I had my taxes filed like the beginning in February or something. It felt so good. I was like, I'm going to do this every year. But that's really not what happened every year. But I just want to say, with this, you do it once, and then you just relook at it once a year. You're not having to do it like taxes. Right. It's not like doing it from the beginning each time, right? So most of the time, you're not going to have to make adjustments, but sometimes you are. And if you don't do it, there's huge consequences that have come. I mean, I've personally seen where, the death benefit went to an ex-spouse, and that ex-spouse was not gracious at all, didn't give up a dime. And that's just like, wow, people can be cold, right?
When it comes to money, it's cold out there.
Oh.
And I think one of the saddest things that happens when there isn't a plan in place and a parent passes away, and there's all kinds of consternation between the children, and there is no parent that would want their children never to speak to each other again.
Yeah, consternation is a pretty nice word, right? I mean, just the bold hatred that just festers, I guess is the word, right? So they start to become like enemies in life, and they can't stand the sight of each other or the name of the other one. They never see each other again. And it's not just that, but it's the kids of those that the cousins never get to see each other. It just rips whole. That's really was my motivation. It happened to a family that I grew up across the street from when I was a child, this Mormon family. And they had a lot of kids, and they were the envy of me, because I thought, wow, what a close knit family. They have family night once a week. They're always at church. They're just so loving and everything. And no, when the mother died, they don't talk to each other. They took sides. There's all kinds of shenanigans that went on with the money.
Well,
So,
and it actually oftentimes will even start in the hospital, because if the parent doesn't have their living will and their, those documents in place,
right.
the healthcare proxy, the living will, the power of attorney, if those aren't in place when they're in the hospital, and somebody makes a decision to pull the plug, oh my God, you killed mom. And then they never speak to each other again. But if
Yes,
mom was
it's
the one who
not funny.
said,
I don't mean to laugh, everybody, but
no,
you should
but
see Linda's. You're if you're not watching this on video, Linda is just almost like a comedian saying this, like, "Oh my God, you killed mom!" But it's true. It's
and
absolutely
then,
true.
when mom says, I don't want to be intubated, I do not want to be resuscitated, now you're following her wishes and nobody is making the decision to pull the plug.
That's right.
So, it's a gift that you give to your loved ones. It's a
Absolutely.
gift that says, I love you more than anything else in the world. I want you to be happy and to have this gift from me that you don't have to worry.
Yeah.
You don't, that
Yeah.
you're going to be taken care of.
Right.
And so often you see people that forget that their beloved fur baby, it becomes abandoned because nobody in the family wants mom's dog. Nobody wants dad's parrot that's going to outlive everybody. Uh, you know, so
That's right.
thinking ahead on who would want to take on that responsibility and making
Abs-
those arrangements ahead, then your family doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. These are all like these words of wisdom that are just so obvious, yet who's having these conversations, right? It's like, and I mean, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, yeah, you know what, I really do need to do that, you need to actually have your friends and your family and everybody that you know, send them the link, because sometimes you don't want to be the person that's sort of, I don't want to say preaching to them, but my God, if they're not willing to do this only because they didn't know, then that becomes something they can't say anymore. They can't say, well, I didn't know, nobody told me, because we tend to be like, what do they say? They say that ignorance is passed on from one generation to the next, right? If your
But
parents didn't believe in life insurance, well, I guess you don't have to believe in life insurance, right? Well, they
oh
didn't
my
know any
God,
better.
but your life insurance can be such a lifesaver. And I mean, like in my husband's case, it was really ironic. He got life insurance when he was 18 years old. He was a commercial fisherman. His
Yeah,
mother insisted that he have enough life insurance to bury him at that point. Because if something happened to him when he was out on his boat, she wanted to make sure that he could be buried. Okay, cool. So he got these 3 little tiny life insurance policies when he was 18. Well, he was diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 40, and he could not get any additional life insurance at that point. But he had kept those policies from the time he was 18. And even though the face value of these policies was like $15,000,
hmm.
the payout was over 80,000
Oh, nice. Well, that's
because he
nice.
kept paying those premiums all,
Right,
even though they were long paid up.
right,
But he,
right.
and they were tiny, one was $29 a year. I mean,
Right. Oh, I
you
know.
know,
Some of those are excellent. But yeah, and some of them, that's the other thing people don't know. Some people have paid up life insurance policies, which you wouldn't know because there's no paper trail or there's no
right.
financial money going out monthly or annually even. So that's why it's so important to do this work now and have everything gathered together. The course that I have called the Got It Together emergency info file will have all of these things that we're talking about. But you have a book. I want you to talk about your book because your book is very, very good. It'll help people that need to know. Just talk about that.
Okay, so I have this simple little book and it's called And Now What? And it's a life planner and survivor's checklist. And it really it's a lot of mostly forms where you just fill in the blanks, you put in the information, who's the attorney, who the beneficiaries are, what insurance policies, the numbers, the contact numbers,
Mhm.
uh, all your banking information, all your health information, everything goes in here. And then there's a list of documents that you put with the book. It's
Absolutely.
really simple to fill out. And that's the first half of the book is all your stuff. Then the second half of the book goes into what to do when somebody passes away. and what
And
not to do.
that's so important because, right, people, in fact, who was I talking to? They said their mother had died. They didn't even know who to call.
Right.
They had no clue. Who do we even call? So, yeah.
So the second part of the book is about what to do when somebody does pass away. And then the final piece is your healing afterwards.
Important. Yeah.
And, and probably with all of my writing that I've done, the thing that I'm most proud of is the thing I wrote on the last page of this book. And it's really about how life will be different after a loss. That's for sure. But be assured that your life is not over. Who you are is not defined by whose child you were or who you were married to. You have special, unique gifts to discover and share with the world so that when you ask yourself, and now what? You might just be surprised at the answer. And, it gives you hope that there's reason for you to still be here. There's still work for you to do. There's still legacy for you to leave. So for me, that is what this whole book is about. It's about leaving that legacy and, and having everything be calm and collected and being able to go through it. It's a natural life transition. And it's something that we all have to deal with at one point or another in our lives, with our parents, with our spouses. And when my husband passed away, we had grieved the loss of each of his functions as he lost them over a period of 8 years that he was disabled. And we grieved that together, and sharing that grief together made it less of a burden on each one of us. And then when he passed, we were both freed.
Right. That's so beautiful, really.
And he was freed from his suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And I was free to really go on and do the work that's in my heart, and that's the legacy from my dad. So it's really quite exciting and the things that have happened in these last 3 years, I could never have imagined that I would be invited to speak in India, and that I would have spoken in London, and that I've spoken all over the country, and that I would have a radio show. I mean, who would expect all these things to happen?
Yeah.
But you say yes to your life, and doors open, and I know that I've had an impact with people in sharing my story with them and giving them the hope and the tools to have some control in their life and to have some peace in their life.
Well, this has been excellent, Linda. I really appreciate you coming on. And if anybody's interested to get your book, is it through Amazon? Is that where you get it?
You can get it on Amazon, or you can get it on my website, which is thecrisisplanner.com.
Okay.
And very simple. The crisis, CRISISPLANNER.com.
Excellent.
And if you go to thecrisisplanner.com, you can also get some free gifts from me. I have some free checklists, disaster planning checklists, your ICE file, which is your in case of emergency file checklist, as well as a crisis planner roadmap, which kind of, for those of us who are boomers, we know what roadmaps are. Maybe the millennials probably have never seen one, but it is a real roadmap, but it's a digital version of it. So it's kind of cute.
Excellent. Those are great gifts. I really appreciate it. And I hope that our listeners will take you up on your offer. So, this has been excellent. You've actually taken the place of two guests, right? You're able to tell your story. You had a couple stories, your father's story and your husband. So that was excellent. And then you are a professional in this business, helping people to actually get their stuff together and make sure that they don't cause their friends, relatives, children to have to go through a huge fiasco, right?
Chaos and additional stress.
Absolutely.
Whether it's, no matter what it is, there's a grieving process, whether you've lost a job, whether you've got it's a grieving process.
That's
and
right.
There's a depression that's involved with that.
Yeah.
But if you can control the chaos and control the stress, you
Yeah.
can get through the other side. And this, I promise, the sun does come out tomorrow.
Well, you would know, you've been through it. So thank everybody for listening to this episode of Legacy Therapy, planning techniques to leave a stress-free legacy. Easy for me to say, stress-free legacy. And until next time, this is Stacey Golden-Lisnock, your financial advocate, signing off. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Legacy Therapy Podcast. If we hit it out of the park today and you learned at least one new thing to take action on in your own quest to planning the best legacy possible, then be sure to tell your friends, subscribe, and rate and review wherever you get your podcast. The show notes will provide the sites and information that were discussed today. You can get more great tips, resources, and inspiration by visiting our website, legacytherapypodcast.com.